How much combat is required combat? In a lot of games, you have the choice to talk your way through encounters or just skip them entirely. So what happens when you try to do the same in a game known for having combat non-stop from beginning to end? Can you beat Risk of Rain Returns as a pacifist? Before we start anything, we need to set some ground rules. I'm not allowed to intentionally kill any enemy that isn't required to progress. This means I'm allowed to shoot teleporter bosses, Providence, and his worms. That's it. No AoE items, no piercing, nothing. If a non-boss enemy dies, then the run is void and I have to start again. The absolute lowest our kill count can be is 10, but I'll accept if it's a little higher later for reasons I'll get into. Aside from those rules though, I have no other restrictions for myself. I can play any difficulty with any artifact, and I can tweak the damage I deal and take in the settings. Does this negate the difficulty of the run? Sure, but this is less so a challenge and more so just a proof of concept. Someone could totally do this in a standard run with enough luck, skill, and willpower, but I have none of those things. Of course, this still won't exactly be easy, and there will be problems along the way, but I figured that if I could alleviate some of the pain, I would. With all that out of the way, let's think about our character choice here. Immediately, I'm ruling out every melee character, since they generally do really well at hitting multiple enemies really close up, and that's something I'm trying to avoid. Engineer is also out, since his turrets just kind of shoot indiscriminately, which is the exact opposite of not killing things. This leaves 9 characters left. I want someone with high mobility, but also really good single target, which led me to Sniper and Pilot. As long as I'm careful with Sniper, I can safely one-shot almost any boss in the game, and Pilot has some downright wacky movement tech, with some pretty respectable damage as well. Our artifact and difficulty setup will change a bit as we go on, but for right now, we're just playing Command on Drizzle, with double damage enabled in the game config. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, if we can't kill anything, how are we supposed to get items? Sure, there will be barrels around, but that's nowhere near enough to sustain a full build. That's where a special item comes in called Life Savings. This cute little guy generates us $1 whole every 3 seconds, scaling with time and adding a flat extra dollar with each one stacked. This will let us get a bit of money going as we play, and while it's not super valuable right now as we're trying to move as fast as we can, it gets us a few more items and will scale much better later on. On Drizzle, you start with more than enough money to open a chest, so as long as you get a white item first try, you could technically get through the run without having to open barrels as well. Even with the double damage multiplier, our first boss doesn't go down in one shot, but that'll definitely change soon enough. Moving into stage 2, I was a little bit behind on time, but for a good reason. You see, there's a little issue with the way the game decides how to determine what goes into a teleporter event. If you show up too early, the spawn director isn't able to spawn a boss properly and will instead spawn a horde of enemies. This obviously sucks when we're trying to kill as few enemies as possible and is basically a guaranteed reset. At this point, I wasn't sure what time to aim for, so I overstayed a little bit on stage 1. The stage 2 boss pool is actually pretty rough for this run specifically. The Lynx Totem, which I got this time, is able to constantly spawn minions, and Ancient Wisps spawn a group of wisps on death. Either way, I'm pretty much forced to use an unstable watch to give myself a window to kill the boss immediately, but here I botched it and had to try to kill the boss normally anyway. Either way though, I made it through without killing anything else and moved on to stage 3. After finding the teleporter almost immediately, I made my first major mistake of the run. 2 wandering vagrants spawned, and in my confusion while trying to pick up the yellow item that one dropped, I mistakenly shot a clayman standing next to me. So usually, if I'm playing with Artifact of Command, I left click to grab my item. This also uses your primary fire at the same time, so for this run I've been opting to use the E key instead. I messed up here, and this won't be the only time either, but regardless, I pushed forward after taking out the last vagrant. This was also the first teleporter where 2 bosses spawned and was a sign that I was playing a bit too slowly. However, this teleporter did have benefits. I picked up a Hardlight Afterburner and a Red Whip, both of which became staple items for me moving forward because of just how good they were for my movement. I pushed through stage 4 and eventually stage 5 as well, going through 2 more double boss encounters and accidentally obliterating another Clayman before finally reaching the final stage, the Contact Light. This stage is a turning point for each attempt. The final boss event is always set in stone, so I'm free to sit around for as long as I need to loot the stage, and man does this stage have a lot to loot. My first attempt, I spent a bit over 10 minutes just roaming around before finally going to face Providence. This fight, with the setup I have, is a complete pushover. As long as I made sure to use Scouter first, none of the phases stood a chance. I took him down and ended the first run with 17 kills, 13 of which were boss kills. I don't know where the other 2 kills came from, but regardless, this run is still invalid. Moving forward from my next attempt, I decided to swap up a sniper in favor of pilot. I also enabled glass and turned down the damage I take to 10% of standard. My damage still isn't on the same level as sniper's was, but it's still pretty damn good, and I am more than willing to take a dip in DPS if it means I can do this. Pilot has a little tech where if you hold S and no other directional keys, you can B-hop at insane speeds with his alt utility. With this, I can traverse the stage much faster and play for a bit better time. This run, I entered stage 5 several minutes earlier, and while I still had double bosses on stages 3 and 4, stage 5 was our first time getting a single boss this late into the run. I got an overloading Lynx totem to spawn, and while normally that would be terrifying, the watch came in handy once again and sent me to the final stage with only 7 kills so far. With any luck, I could clear this run with 12 boss kills and nothing else. Going into the contact light again, I spent way less time looting. My damage is already juiced out enough, I was sure I could clear Providence in no time at all. Oops. Well, this run is unfortunately invalid too, but this run also made me realize something. If getting a 10 kill run is possible, then it is an RNG nightmare. In all of my attempts, not just those that made it to the end, but in all of the runs that were cut short as well, I haven't had a single run where I've had less than 2 bosses for stages 3 and 4. I don't know the specifics of how the teleporter director works for this game, and if there's an expert out there, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. But from my experience, I don't know if it's possible to get single spawns from stage 3 onward unless it's an elite. Maybe I haven't had the perfect timing yet, but in my testing it feels like I can only get hordes or double spawns. Either way, that didn't stop me from trying again, even if I had to accept that I probably won't achieve that ideal 10 kill count at the end. For my next run, I chose to play on Rainstorm instead of Drizzle, in hopes that it'd let me play a little bit faster and still avoid horde spawns. Otherwise, the setup is still the same here. At this point, I was getting into a really good groove. As long as I made it through the first 2 stages, I almost always made it through to Providence. Once I had my first few items, it was pretty set in stone that I'd make it through. Stage 1 this run gave me an incredibly early hard light afterburner, enabling my movement for pretty much the entirety of the run. Stages 2 and 3 were over as quickly as they started, with stage 3 unfortunately giving me a double spawn. Stage 4 gave me another red item that turned into a Dio's, but otherwise nothing of note happened here either. Stage 5 thankfully gave me another elite boss, and now it was time I went back to the contact light. So earlier in the day, I had an attempt that made it here as well, but I made a stupid mistake and accidentally used my secondary skill, killing a crowd and ending my run. This time, I wanted to be a little bit more careful, so I unbound literally all of my damaging skills, and I only rebound them once I was in the fight with Providence. As usual, I took the stage as a chance to loot up, finding a second Dio's at one point before moving on to the final fight. Not that I really needed it though, this game is admittedly pretty damn easy with double damage and 1/10 of the damage taken. Regardless though, I made it through the finale and got to look at my stats. Yes! Oh, I think that might be as low as I can push it. I don't know. 12 kills. No normal enemies, only bosses. As far as I know, this might be the limit for how low you can really take this. Maybe with incredible luck and timing, it's still possible to knock 1 or 2 off of the list, but as far as I can tell, this is it. So no, you can't really beat Risk of Rain Returns as a pacifist, but you can get pretty damn close. Either way, this was a really fun concept to test, and I'd love to run it back sometime. Thank you for watching.